Thank you everyone for joining this meetup this evening or morning or wherever you are in the world. So just a little bit about ourselves. So we're a group of data professionals who love to learn and share experiences, especially working with Power BI and other data-related technologies. So there are four of us organizing the DC chapter: Shannon, Jiang, Rocio, and Je. And we are also a part of the global network of Power BI, I would say Power Platform user group. So if you visit the Power Platform UG.com, you can find, I would say, user groups, trainings, as well as other information for Power BI, Power Apps, as well as Power Automate. And here's I would say, a high-level view of the different components of Power Platform, if you are not familiar. So Power Platform is a local platform that allows us to build application using Power Apps, provide analytics reporting using Power BI, and automate those business process, data movement, as well as deliveries using Power Automate. So if you're interested in learning more than just Power BI, and interested in learning Power Apps, D365, SharePoint UG, Power Apps for government, you can visit a list of other active local groups here. I think JV is hosting this organizer for the Power Apps and Power Automate group. So I just want to share an upcoming event hosted by the Power Apps and Power Automate group on December 3rd. So the group will talk about Microsoft Dataverse for Teams, which I just learned today. It's a new name for Microsoft, the CDS, the Common Data Services. So if you are free, be sure to check out this meetup coming up on December 3rd. Just a quick plug for our December meetup. Instead of doing what we typically do is a long one single feature presentation, we'll be doing a collection of demos. So the goal is to kind of share different use cases for Power BI. So just one last slide before I hand it over to Shannon and Phil. We want to see if anyone has any announcements, interesting news in the world of technology, Power BI. Also, anyone has any opportunities they want to share, or anyone seeking opportunities. Going once, twice. All right, Shannon, Phil, it's all yours.
All right, thanks so much, Z. Thanks so much to everybody for joining us. I really love the fact that kind of both of my worlds are colliding here. So we've got our user group members, we have a lot of representation from Blue Raster on the line, and we also have a lot of friends of Blue Raster on the line. So thank you so much to everyone for joining us. We are going to do what Blue Raster does best, and we're going to talk to you today about mapping. We're going to talk to you about how to use the ArcGIS Map visual in Power BI. And Phil's going to walk us through a really neat demo of all of the different capabilities that the tool has. It's really interesting to me as a longtime Power BI user because there's this one little map visual and there are so many different tools embedded within it. So Phil's going to walk us through step by step in a live demo of how the tool can be used. He's going to give us a use case. And then we're going to have a second demo where I am going to talk through how to build an interactive legend in Power BI, which sounds like it should be really simple, but it's actually a bit complex. So we'll go through that as well. And before we jump into the two demos, Phil's going to give a 101 about location intelligence. So first, a quick introduction about us. Blue Raster is a small business. We are in GIS, web application development, and BI. We started in 2002, and we have our founders on the line. So thanks for joining, Mike and Steven. We are a Microsoft partner. We're also an Esri Gold partner. And we've been fortunate enough to receive a couple of awards for our storytelling and for being the small business winner 2019. All right, so we have we work with a number of different clients in both the government sector, the nonprofit sector, and in the private sector, mostly specializing in conservation and public health. We do a lot of what I like to call data for good, which, you know, makes it a great place to work. And we just wanted to demonstrate some of the clients we've been working with over the past couple of years using Power BI. Most recently and most notably, we've been working with some clients through an Esri award that is funded by the CDC doing COVID dashboards. So it's been really interesting, and I mean, I guess I don't want to say upsetting, but it's an interesting time, and we've been fortunate enough to be able to make sure that the public is getting the information that they need to be able to navigate this time. A little bit about us. Phil, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. First of all, I want to say thank you to the user group for doing this team up. It's going to be, I think, a lot of fun for me to know that there's a lot of you out there who know a lot more about Power BI than I do, and hopefully I'll show you something that maybe you don't know. But I'm a program manager at Raster, and I've come from actually started out making paper map books, paper street atlases, if you remember those. And I've been in GIS for a couple decades now.
Thanks so much, Phil. And my name is Shannon. I think I know most people on the line. Thanks so much for joining, everybody. I'm the Power BI lead here at Raster. Okay, so I'm actually going to hand this over to Phil now. He's going to take us through some kind of GIS 101, and then he's going to jump right into our first demo. One thing I do want to mention is keep an eye on the chat. We'll be dropping links in the chat throughout the presentation. So if you need a link to be able to find any of the resources, we will let you know where those are. And then if you have any questions or, you know, something urgent that you really want to ask, please unmute yourself and ask. That's completely fine. So Phil, take it away.
All right, so what is location intelligence? Well, it can mean many things to many people. And in my case, and I'm paraphrasing Wikipedia here, which is the consultant's secret, location intelligence is the process of deriving insights from geospatial relationships. And actually, let's take a step back for a minute. We've talked a lot about GIS tonight. I realize that not everybody knows about GIS. And I would also like to mention that tomorrow is World International GIS Day. So there'll be a lot more fun map-based demos tomorrow. But GIS, for those who don't know, it stands for Geographic Information Systems. And it really means the tools and techniques that are used to discover location intelligence. And according to a survey by Forbes, there's a chance that 80% of the data that you have has some location element to it. So we're going to show you how to tap into that. Righty. All right, and now a little bit about ArcGIS. If you're not familiar with Esri and ArcGIS, by now probably most of you have seen that Johns Hopkins COVID dashboard. That is built using ArcGIS. It's using ArcGIS Online, which is Esri's cloud-based service. But Esri has a very large array of different tools, including ArcGIS Pro, which is their desktop GIS, and ArcGIS Enterprise, which is their server solution. And of course, the ArcGIS Maps for Power BI Visual, which we're going to talk about. Now, why would you want to use this? There are different mapping visualizations available in Power BI. The ArcGIS Maps is very easy to use. You just drop in one location to start it into one field. You can use multiple layers. You can have a layer of data that's in Power BI, and you can have multiple reference layers beneath it. You can actually have web maps added to it if you're familiar with web maps. So that's really cool. You can access publicly available data from Esri, and you don't need any kind of Esri login to use this visualization. Now, if you do have the login and you do have an organizational account with Esri and the Power BI license, which is about $60 a year, you can unlock a much, much more rich experience with really, really cool functionality. But primarily that license is used if you are an Esri user already and you have a ton of your own curated content that you've gone out and created or curated or bought or whatever, and you want to use that in Power BI. Or maybe you're already a heavy Esri user and you've heard a lot about this Power BI thing and you want to see, hey, how can I take some of my data and show it in Power BI? And of course, it's highly customizable and it is fully interactive with the data that you have in Power BI. Here are a couple of examples of how we've been using the tool. This one is showing methane leaking from an oil well in Texas. We actually took some points, we geo-enriched them using ArcGIS Image Server, and we brought them back into Power BI. This is some public safety data that shows bicycle crashes. And this is a little report to look at malaria insecticide treated bed nets versus the prevalence of malaria. And all these are using the ArcGIS Maps for Power BI Visual.
Phil, can I pause you for just 1 second?
Yes.
There is a question in the chat that's asking, how does Esri, GIS, and ArcGIS relate to each other? Like, there's so many acronyms. What do we need to know about them?
Sure. Esri is the company that started in the 1960s that developed the tool called ArcGIS, and that's their flagship branded product. It's morphed into a whole family of different solutions, and one of those solutions is the ArcGIS Maps for Power BI Visual. So basically, anything related to a map, and what's even more powerful, what goes on underneath, on the back end of that map, all of that crunching of that data to create those spatial relationships and analyses. That's Esri. Thanks. Okay, so now we're going to dive right into using the tool. I'm going to be moving a little bit fast, but I know there's a lot of you out there who are going to know a lot about what I'm doing, and some of you who maybe aren't, so we'll have time for question and answers later. But so for our demo tonight, we are going to pretend that I am not a GIS guy, but I have a small construction company in Maryland, and I build houses and I do house renovations. And I have a really smart nephew who has been interested in GIS and Power BI and open data. And he came to me and he said, Uncle, I have found that there's an open data site with data on demolition permits. So what I want to do is let's use business intelligence and location intelligence to help you build your business. I said, okay, I'm game as long as it doesn't cost me anything. So I discovered this site. This is the Montgomery County, Maryland open data site. One of the data sets available here is demolition permits. And I figured if I can make a map of these demolition permits, maybe I can come in and replace what used to be there. So since I'm using Power BI, I'm going to use the OData connector. And I will just copy that. But in the interest of time, we already went ahead and did this. This is our data at our source. And you can see there is a lot of useful information here and a lot of information that is not useful. So we went through a long number of steps to remove some columns, to do some filtering, and do some parsing and other things like that. So as a map guy, when I was checking this out, I noticed immediately that, okay, there's a location column here, but for some reason, it has the spatial reference ID and the feature type along with the lat-long pairing right in this one column. And I know because I'm a mapping guy that my mapping engine is not going to like that. So we ended up splitting up that column and parsing out the lat and long into separate columns so we could use them with our map visual. And we can show you how to do that or follow that up later. And I also know, because I'm a mapping guy, I don't always trust lat longs. So I noticed here that I have some address information here, but it's incomplete. This is the house number, but I know that my geocoder, my mapping visualization, is going to need my city and my zip code and my state. So I said to my #1 Power BI guru, Shannon, what are we going to do? And she said, not to worry. What we're going to do is we are going to create a column from examples. We're going to add a column. So, and now I know a lot of you might know this already, but I thought it was really neat. And if I wanted to demo it. So first, I'm just going to start my first address here. And Power BI already sees it right there, so it knows what I want to do. And now I'm going to look around here, and I'm going to find my city right there, Cabin John. Very nice area over there by the Potomac River. If you've never been there, I suggest it. And let's see, this is the DC area, so I could be Maryland or Virginia or DC around here, but let's see, I have a state column in here, and I know that there it is, it's Maryland, so I'll just add that in there. And I see that the zip code is 20818. And you can see that my new column is created with all my addresses properly formed, that I know from experience that my mapping visualization is going to like those. So that was just a neat little step that we did that I thought people might find interesting. All right, so now let's take a look at some maps. And so first thing I wanted to do was, let's just get a look at the area and get the overview. So I built a choropleth map using my demolition permits, and we're going to dive into how we can build these things in just a minute. And I see that there's a ton of activity down here. So already I'm picking up some location intelligence that's telling me, okay, you know, this is really the area where there's more demolition permits. There's 493 of them in this zip code. So, you know, maybe this is where I want to see. So there, I'm confirmed there that I have 493 permits in there. And I have a whole bunch of tools available to me within this tool set here, which I'm going to dive into right now. All right, so I've pre-built some filters and slicers on this page because I thought this is a Power BI user group. You guys probably know how to do those already, no problem. But now we're going to make the map.
Phil, before you start building, can we jump in with one question?
Yeah.
So there was a question in the chat from Eamon who asked if you can read a shapefile directly into Power BI.
I don't think you can in this visual. I think you would have to bring it into ArcGIS Online first.
Yeah.
But that's something we can follow up on that.
And just one quick addition to that, there is something called a shape map in Power BI. It's one of the out-of-the-box map visuals where you can bring in a shape file, but it does have some limitations. So stick with us and check out what you can do within the ArcGIS map visual, and then let us know if you still have questions at the end.
Yeah, it's a great question. Okay, so you can see here that I'm already signed in and to my organizational account. If I didn't have that, that's fine. I can still use this, but again, it is a little bit more limited. So I'm going to grab my brand new column that I created. And since I was so smart and wise to put in the zip code and the city and the state, Power BI knows exactly where to locate those. But if I didn't have that information, if I had maybe counties, which might be the name of Montgomery, might be found in many different countries around the world, I can come here to my location type, and then I could choose the country that I want to locate into, among many other options here. All right, so back when I was actually loading in my data, I also loaded in a table of my own job sites. So I have active job sites that I'm already working on. I know the address of those, and I know some other data about those. I know how many employees I have on there. I know how much revenue I'm getting from those. And I decided that I wanted to visualize those on my map. But I know that in Power BI and the ArcGIS Maps for Power BI visual, you can have one layer, one data set from Power BI. So I went ahead and I did a little bit of processing on this data so that I was able to append it into my one source with my demolition permits. And that will allow me to come over here and to visualize it on the map like this. So now Power BI automatically knows there's two fields in here. One is demolition, one is active. So it picks the colors for me. I can change those if I don't like them. But in this case, the red is a demolition permit and the blue is one of my active jobs. I also have some more information I can use on my map. I have team size, that's how many employees I have. So I can drag that into here. And now I can see the points are resizing based on the number of employees that I have. And this example, it could be so many things. This could be, it could be the Girl Scouts selling cookies. It could be maybe a political campaign distributing pamphlets. It really could be so many different possibilities. And I also have a value. So I'm going to drop that in. Oops, I'm going to drop that here. Put this back over here. All right, so now I have my map that's displaying demolition permits in red, and in blue I have my active jobs, and they are sized by the value. When I pulled in my data from Montgomery County, the data actually goes back to 2000. So it's got 20 years of data in there. I pulled in 5 years because I thought maybe I could, for contextual information. I'm going to just filter this a little bit to maybe the last roughly 2 years-ish. So that drops me down to a lower amount. And now we'll take a look at these tools that I have in here. Close that for a minute. Okay, so going down, this is my selection tool. So this is going to allow me, if I want to select a point, do that. And if I want to do a bounding box, it'll allow me to do that. So, and you can see filtering my other visuals by the map. This is a handy tool. If you know you're looking for a particular address, it's going to just start typing it in and it can locate it for you. It's going to drop this nice little pin there for you. And that leads me down to my layers list. Now, this is a very important tool here. There's a lot you can do with this. You can toggle these on and off. You can remove them, which I'm going to do now. And also my legend is inside here. This legend, I'm not the biggest fan of it. That's part of why Shannon is going to show you how to build your own custom legend. But we talked to the Power BI team at Esri a lot, and they are actually working on that. In here, I can also change my symbology. I could rename this. Let's take a look at the symbology. So I could change it to just points. I can build a heat map, size, color, size and color, what I had before, and some clustering, which is pretty handy in some cases too, but I'm going to go back to size and color. And I've got additional controls here about the look and feel. I can change the number of breaks or classification type, do some resizing. I can change my colors in here if I want to, but I'm pretty happy with them, so I'm going to leave them as they are. And now here we get into some of that contextual information. So if your organization has its own base maps that you've created, or you've curated a base map set, let's say you only want to allow 1 or 2 kinds of base maps, you can set that up in your organizational account, and that would be reflected here. Or you can choose from the Esri base map set. So they have a lot of nice base maps here. This one's pretty sharp. Here we can, this is really meant to highlight the transportation network, but I'm just going to go back to our light gray. And now we get to some more of the real fun stuff. This little widget allows me to build some infographics up here. So I am a home builder. I'm kind of interested in, let's say, home value. So I'm just going to build that little info widget up there. So now this is telling me this entire map view, the median home value of what I see here. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. You'll see this will filter to, I'm in the high rent district over here. You can see this will filter to just what I have on the map. So that's handy just of its own accord. And there are many, many different data sets you can have in your infographic, and you can do multiple infographics. You can do a whole panel of them if you want. This is really great, this tool. This allows you, it's called Reference Layer, but it's really the key to unlocking your own data. So it allows you to choose from this curated set of data that Esri provides. It allows you to choose from their Living Atlas, which has hundreds and hundreds of data sets from all over the world that they acquire, they buy, they partner with groups for, and these are authoritative, fully vetted, totally reliable data sets. Or if you are that organizational user, it allows you to pull from your own data set. So I can pull data from my own custom data that I have spent time creating. So I'm just going to add this in here, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And actually, you know what? Take that out now. And I'm going to add in one of these reference layers. I am going to add in population growth. So this is historic and projected population growth for the past couple of years. It looks out a year ahead. So now here I am with a lot of information here. I can see demolition permits for the last couple of years. I could filter on the status. Maybe I don't want completed or final. Maybe I just want issued. I could filter there. And I can see now that I have high growth in these areas. So, you know, maybe I want to use this map to send some marketing materials to my crews, have them go out there, look for these houses with the demolition permits and distribute some materials, and maybe I'll get some phone calls that way. And there's also another tool in here, which is called drive time. So let's take a look at that. Just to make things a little bit more clear, I'm going to remove my reference layer for now. And I'm going to look at this drive time widget. So what this tool allows me to do is to select a location, and I can click on it or do a bounding box. And it's going to allow me to create a radius around that location. And I can choose the distance that I want, and I can choose the, if it's miles or yards, feet, or kilometers or other. Or I can choose a drive time, and Esri has a methodology that's based on the topology of the road network and traffic lights that will basically calculate the distance that you can drive from that point within a certain amount of minutes. So I'm just going to do 3 minutes. Let's see what's in 3 minutes. So that, and here I go. So I have a nice polygon there that shows this is my drive time that I can cover, 3 minutes in basically any direction from that point. So that looks pretty good. I think that I should send some pamphlets to the crew that's working at this site, but how many should I send? I'm not actually sure how many points are in here. So let's take a look at what we can do. I can come up here to my layer widget. I can select my drive time polygon, make that active. I open this guy, and now I have another selection model in here, which is the drive time select. So I'm going to click on that, click on my polygon, and now you can see I have 48 points in that drive time. So now I know exactly how much materials that I should give to my crew. I know that it's not going to take them too much to cover that ground, and that I should have a pretty high probability of getting some success out of that. So it's a really fun tool. And I can also, let's say I have some people on foot or on bicycle, maybe. I can do that same thing, but I can do just a radius distance. Maybe I just want to do 1 mile. And now I can see all the ground I can cover in that 1 mile, and all the locations I can hit, and I can go ahead and cross filter by that as well. So, well, what about, I seem to remember there was some population growth over here. Can I use that to my advantage? So let's go back in here and bring up our reference layer again, our population growth. And I see this looks like a area of high growth. So let's come over here. We're going to select our layer in the layer widget, pop open this guy, and now we have another new tool in here, which is the reference layer select. Click on that, and let's grab that. And now I know I've got 8 demolition permits in that one tiny area. So that's just another way that I can use the map and really begin to tease out some helpful information. And I have this nice little table here that if I'm looking at this on my phone, maybe I'll have my nice filtered list of addresses, and I'll be able to use this to actually find these addresses and distribute my materials. And we actually have one more trick up our sleeve tonight. And that is, if you noticed it, over here, there is this little field rail that says find similar. So let's just drop this guy in there. And now when I open up my tools, I have another option here, which is called find similar. And what this is going to allow me to do, it's going to allow me to filter my data set on this field, and it's going to calculate the most similar matches to that. So I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to hit run. And now I have the 10 most similar jobs to these are my active jobs. I know that these are the most similar in value to this point that I have selected. And actually, let's click on that guy. This is going to filter our report. So now I have my nice list of these are my 10 locations that are most similar to that location, which I deemed was important to me for some reason. So imagine if you had a massively large data set that was at a nation level, and you wanted to find out those really, you know, get down into the fine grains and find those outliers. You can pile up a bunch of different fields in this Find Similar tool, and you're able to find up to 250 similar locations. So that could be something that would be really powerful. And that is the conclusion of my demo. So I'm going to pass it over to Shannon, and she is going to get into legend building.
But before we do, Phil, we have quite a few questions that arose during your presentation. So let's start there, and then we'll jump into the next demo.
Sounds good.
If anyone's head is spinning, don't worry. Phil is here to answer all your questions, and we are really fortunate. We also have some folks from Esri on the line, so hopefully we can get a good discussion going about this. So the first question, Phil, is from Lauren, asking if anyone has experienced identifying locations in your data set that are not able to be plotted on the map. Lauren, if you want to take yourself off mute and elaborate, that would be great.
Sorry, just figuring out the mute button. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we work with a global data set of hand-typed addresses. So we have a feeling that a lot of them might not be plotted. And I know working with Tableau, it'll say in the bottom right corner, 60 locations were not plotted. So I'm wondering if there's a way to identify what would not get included in this map, or if there's a way to do that at the Power Query stage as well. Thank you.
I don't believe there's a way to do it at the Power Query stage. And I also am not sure if there's a message that would tell you if a location failed, because we didn't set up that use case, but it wouldn't be hard for me to try that and see if we do get a message. So I know there's also a really cool tool called ArcGIS for Excel that it's also very handy, and you get some nice messaging in there if your geocode fails. So I'm pretty sure you'll probably get that in here as well, but we can find that out for you.
Awesome.
And I do think, just to add to that, I have come across that before. It will tell you the number of locations that are not able to be found. But again, teasing out what those locations are, there's not an out of the box way. But this to me sounds like a fun challenge. I do think that we could find some kind of a workaround to figure it out. Jose's got some suggestions in the chat, so I'm going to look into those, and then I'm going to keep digging into this because this sounds fun.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
Oh, Shannon.
It's okay. I'm in quarantine, so it's fine.
That's the oldest problem in GIS. If you can solve it, my hat's off to you.
All right. Well, so the next question is from Eamon, asking if points need to have projected coordinates if you're using latitude and longitude. And Eamon, if I am mispronouncing your name, sincere apologies. Please feel free to take yourself off mute and elaborate.
It's a good question. I am going to just guess that the visual is smart enough to interpret that, but I would have to check in the documentation for that. That is a great question.
Thank you. All right, we've got two more. All of the hard questions are for you, and then when I present, it's only easy questions. So the next question is from Tanya, and Tanya, please feel free to unmute yourself. Her question is about the reference layers being added to Power BI and the default transparency that's set to those layers. Is there any way to control that transparency? Tanya, did I capture that right?
Yeah, absolutely right. Thank you.
Let's take a look. I don't know if you could control. Nope. Looks like no.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just thought maybe you guys had heard of something I hadn't, and it's not a big deal. I'm new to this, but I can see in the future some layers we don't want to just have the default transparency in some cases. So I thought I'd ask the geniuses here, but thank you very much.
Okay.
So one thing, Phil, that I'm thinking, and let me know if this would or would not work, if you have the license to use ArcGIS Maps for Power BI, then you could create any kind of layers in any kind of styling that you prefer, and then bring those in rather than just using the default reference layers. That would solve the problem if you are already an ArcGIS user.
Yes, absolutely. And we're using Enterprise Portal. And we are creating our own layers, and no matter what we do, it brings them in with a default transparency. So I've been talking to Esri about it, and they kind of added it to the roadmap list. But just being able to control that transparency, and it is kind of weird that, yeah, we're creating our own services with no transparency or a different transparency, and it just defaults it to, very similar to what the layers are showing here. But yeah, thank you. If you guys see anything else other than that, let me know. But I haven't been able to be successful with that.
We will keep our eye out.
Go
ahead.
No, I was just going to say thanks to Tanya. There's one additional question, and then we're going to move on. There are a couple more that have popped up in the chat. So maybe while I'm presenting, Phil, if you want to jump in there and start to answer some of those. The final question is from Terry, about the analysis in ArcGIS Maps for Power BI. If you're doing analysis like drive time, does it use a...
Sorry, say that again?
Does the analysis in ArcGIS Maps for Power BI, like drive time analysis or find similar, do those use ArcGIS credits?
That's also a great question, and I'm pretty sure the answer is no, but I will find out the definitive answer. I do not think it uses any credits.
Lots of great questions, and it sounds like we have a lot of mapping experts on the line, so we're glad you guys are here. Alrighty, so I think now we are going to jump into the second portion of the evening. We are almost at an hour already, so if people have to jump off, we know that it's evening or afternoon or maybe even morning where you are, I'm not sure, but everybody has other responsibilities, so feel free to jump off if you need to. We'll provide the link to the presentation and the Power BI desktop files and also the recording. I'm going to go ahead and take over the screen share, and we're going to talk a little bit now about interactive legends in Power BI. And this use case is specifically using the ArcGIS map visual, but you could use it for other map visuals as well. So let's jump in. I have just like 2 slides. It's very quick. The use case here is that we needed to have a map visual in Power BI where the legend was interactive with the data. So not only interactive with the data on the map, but also interactive with the other data in the report. And it needed to be able to cross-filter. And then most importantly, we wanted to specify in this map static breaks so that the legend breaks aren't dynamic depending on the data, which, depending on what it is that you're looking at, you may or may not want that. The use case here was that we're looking at, like, let's say, for example, you're looking at COVID testing rates over time, and you want to be able to compare the different counties over time to each other. This is a really blurry GIF, but I'll show you guys in the actual tool. So if you're using the out-of-the-box legend, it's great, but the actual values in the legend are dynamic. And so that was not what we needed here. We needed something static. So what we did essentially was a giant workaround, but it worked really well. And we've gotten a lot of positive feedback on it. So we wanted to share it with you guys. Okay, so there's a lot of text on this slide. You do not need to read it all, but this is what we're going to do together in the demo file. So what we're going to do is the first thing we need to make sure we do is that we shape our data properly in order to be able to build this legend. And then some hex codes into there so that we can customize it. I'm going to show you kind of my favorite website for picking a color scheme using hex codes. And then we're going to essentially build a table that has conditional formatting on the font and conditional formatting on the background. So it's really totally a workaround solution, but it works well. And so let's jump in. Alrighty, so what I want to show you all first is this is one of the maps that Phil showed us. This was his choropleth map. I can never pronounce that word or spell it. This is his choropleth map, and here we were looking at the number of demolition permits per zip code. So what you can see here is that if you hover over any of the points, you've got, you know, in zip code 20854, we've got 83 permits. And everything on the report cross filters the way that we would expect it to. But what we do see here is that this legend is not exactly what we want it to be. And this is dynamic as you go through the different time periods. So what we need to do is to do our fancy little workaround where we will get something that looks like this. My internet is pretty slow, so forgive the latency on the rendering of the map. But what I want to show you all is that this legend is interactive when it renders. So it interacts not only with the map, but also with the other data that's in the model. And you can also set the colors according to your own color scheme, however you want them. This example is pretty obnoxious, but I just want it to be bright and bold and show you what it is that we're doing. So you'll see here, I mean, you can sort and filter by permit status, you can use the date slider, everything functions properly. And the key to this functioning properly is actually making it structured correctly. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to jump into the Power Query editor. We're not going to build from scratch, but I'm going to show you what I did in there just in case you all things similar. So as I jump into the query editor, I am also going to just pull up some notes here. All right, so the first thing that you will notice is I am looking here at the exact same query that Phil had. This was his demolition permits query. Now, this was really all he had. Phil had the demolition permits query and he had his job sites. He appended them all together and ended up with this one table that he was using in his report. In the grand scheme of things, those of you that are Power BI users, whether you're novice or advanced, you, I'm sure, now understand the significance of having a properly built out dimensional data model. Now, if this is going over your head, ignore me for now. We'll drop some links into the chat for some really good resources to look it up. But essentially, what we need to make sure that we have are different tables that or organize the data in different ways. So for example, in my data model now, I've got my demolitions permit table. I've got a zip code dimension, and this is just a dimension table that is pulling the zip code column from my fact table, so from the demolition permit. It is pulling that zip code column and it's providing a unique instance of that zip code just so that we're able to properly sort and filter and map and slice and dice. And then here is the real trick to this workaround working properly. If you are a Power BI user, this is going to seem really, what's the right word? Wrong. It's not going to seem like the right thing to do because what we actually have to do is to summarize the data in Power Query first, and then we'll put it onto the map. Now, you won't need to summarize the data in every single instance. It depends on the shape that your data comes in as. So in this example, we essentially have 1 row per permit of data. Okay, which is what Power BI likes. Power BI works really well with 1 row of data. It rolls everything up really nicely, and it's a super powerful tool for that reason. I cannot speak tonight. But so for the purposes of this demo, what we had to do is we had to say, okay, let's summarize the data at zip code level. And I'm going to show that to you here. And so all I did is I started at the source step, and I'm just going to walk through these steps quickly, so bear with me. So the first step here is just my fact table. So this is just the demolition permits query in the very last shape that Phil left it in. Okay, so this is his work. I'm just stealing, borrowing. Okay, from here, I went ahead and removed columns that I did not need, and I'm left with the permit number, the zip code, and then a column that says if it is a demolition site, work around here so that we get a value in that column so that we can then group it. The next thing that I've done is this grouping function, and this is a function that I actually have used quite a bit in Power Query. I'm not sure if other people have experience with it, but essentially what I did is I said, let's group these rows by zip code, and then let's add a column that is the sum of the demo column. Okay, now for those of you that are new to Power BI, we're making these transformations in Power Query using the M language, but the way to use the M language is by clicking around on the canvas. Okay, so you can either click around on the canvas or you can use the formula bar if you feel more comfortable, or if you're a wizard, you can use the advanced editor. For the purposes of something like this, I just clicked around on the canvas. I get this little pop-up and I'm going to group these. So now you can see I've got in zip code 20818, I've got 15 demo sites, okay? So I then removed, we had a blank zip code row, so there was 1 row of data that didn't have a zip code in it. I removed it. And then here is the real key to making this solution work. I added 3 additional columns, okay? And those are the columns that I'm going to use both in my map and in my legend. Now, Power BI gurus, you will know that adding columns or adding a summary table to your model can be expensive, meaning that additional tables and additional columns take up memory and so if this is a project that you're going to scale to be millions of rows, this may not, well, tens of millions of rows probably, this may not be the best solution. But if this is a solution where you've got hundreds of thousands of values, this is not going to be too expensive. It's not going to break anything. Okay, so very quickly, I'm just going to show you the 3 categories that I added, and then we're going to get to the fun part, which is the building on the canvas. So the first category that I added, I did a little bit of a custom formula here, and I am going to post this Power BI desktop file. So if you are wondering what the heck is going on in here, take this, copy and paste, okay? So the first thing that you need to do is you need to specify your breaks. So here I said, if there's less than 1 demo site, give me a 0. Otherwise, if there's between 1 and 20, give me a 1. If there's between 20 and 50, give me a 2. If there's more than 50 demo sites, give me a 3. Okay, so I'm essentially what we're doing here is we're setting those breaks. Remember, we want the breaks to be static in our legend so that we can look at things over time. The other nice feature doing it in this way, setting a numeric value, is this then becomes your sort order. So I'm not sure if any of you have ever played around with dropping things into a table in Power BI and then they appear in a totally wacky order that you don't expect. This gives us some control over that. Okay, so step 1 is to add this custom column where you're setting your custom breaks. Step 2 is to add a column where you are adding the category label. And this is going to be what you're going to see when you look at the table and it says less than 20 demo sites. This is the column you're going to add. Now, just a quick note, there are a number of different ways you can add custom columns in here. I did this by just adding a custom column, but if you are new to Power BI, I would recommend try playing around with the conditional columns. So here you could say it's all point and click. So you could say if the demo sites is less than or equal to 1, then I don't know, whatever it is you need to say. So just don't be afraid of Power Query. It's much easier than it looks, okay? So we add our sort order, we add the text that we want to appear, our label, and then finally, last but not least, we're gonna add our category. So what you can see here, this is another custom column, okay? And here I am using hex codes of colors and making those their own column. And those are corresponding, again, with the number of demo sites. Now, very quickly, I want to just jump into, I actually did not save this link, but I just want to jump into it. There is a couple of different websites where you can pick hex codes. Key codes is not going to work. So I really like this color hex code sites. HTML color codes is nice as well. What you can do here is you can see, you know, any colors that you want to pick. The hex codes are there. There are also different sites that will give you a range of the different hex codes so that you can see, you know, what you might expect if something is going to look like a gradient, for example. So these HTML color codes, the color code picker, this is where I got the values. And actually, this is the exact example of where I got the values for the demo. Okay, so if anyone is interested in doing different things with hex codes in Power BI, go to the web, this will be your best friend, and then you can just copy and paste these hex values into the formatting pane. And I'll show you that. Okay, so I'm going to jump back into Power Query quickly. So it is these 3 steps here: added category sort, added category label, and added category color. These are the key steps to making this thing work. Okay, so before I load this to the model and I jump back into Power BI, does anybody have any questions? All right. So one other quick, oh, go ahead.
Okay, you're showing it. Yep, that was the question. Show the color code website.
Yes. And here, let me just drop this into the chat real quick. Perfect. All right. So what here now is this is the final product, but we're going to go ahead and build this out. And we're going to do it from scratch just so that we can all see how it was done. So the first thing that we're going to do is to start with our map. And I am going to start by dropping the ArcGIS map visual onto the canvas. There may be someone whose mic is not muted who is eating, but I will not call anyone out like that. All right, so the next thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to build my map. So I'm going to use zip code for location and category for color. So I'm just going to drag these in. Now, one thing that I do want you to notice is that I am pulling here from my summary table. Okay, so this is like not totally normal if you're used to working with Power BI. We don't typically create a summary table, but in this case we did. Okay, and then I'm going to use my category for the color. So I'm just going to drag it right down into here. Okay, so now what you see here are the out-of-the-box colors that Power BI is selecting. Now, one quick note. The category field here, and this is important, the category field is a text field. So you're not going to get the option to select the value for those different groupings if it's stored as a number, which might sound counterintuitive, but that's just the way that it works. So what you're going to do here is we're going to now use these tools that Phil showed us. So we're going to take a look at our layers here. And now you can see here are the colors, okay? So these are the things that we need to change. And I know from what I learned from Phil, I can adjust the symbology here. Okay, so I am going to scroll all the way down here and I'm going to adjust the symbology and I'm going to set this manually, okay? So I'm going to jump over to my clipboard and copy that first hex code value that I know we want for our first category. And I am going to select a custom color. From here, I'm just going to paste the color I need and push tab. And our first color for our first category is this mustard yellow. Okay, then I am going to look at my category number 2 here. And let me jump back to my clipboard. I'm going to set this color, and let me just do this quickly because I feel like I may be boring you at this point. And then we're going to set our color for number 3. That is not what I wanted. Perfect. Okay. And so now we have our ketchup and mustard color palette that may not be super pleasing to the eye. But this is, again, if you need to set them manually, if this is a requirement that you have, this is how you would do it. Okay, so are we all together now for how to change the colors and the symbology on the map? Does anyone have any questions about that? All right. Go ahead, Phil.
Keith Williams posted a question. And Keith, if you're still on, I'll pop back into my demo for a second to show you. It'll take 10 seconds for me to show you, but you'll do that in the layer pane in the Symbology tools there.
Okay, cool. So we'll do that at the end, or do you want? How do you want to handle that, Phil?
At the end.
Okay, cool. Alrighty, so now we've got our map, we adjusted the symbology, and now, okay, yeah, cool, it's a map, it's kind of boring, but what we need next is our legend. That's the whole reason for this demo. So what we're gonna do is we are going to build a table. So I'm gonna come over here to my visualizations pane, I'm gonna drop a table on the canvas. I am going to adjust the size here. And I'm going to drop 2 columns into my table. I'm going to drop category color, and I'm going to drop category label. I am going to do us all a favor and make this bigger because the default is very, very tiny. And change the styling just a bit so that it doesn't look like a table. Okay, remember I said this is a workaround. So I'm going to change the style to none. So we're pretty close here. We've got our category color, we've got our category label. Now we need to do a couple of things. We need to add our conditional formatting to this color, and we need to white out the column headers so that it looks like this. Okay, so if your end users hover over this, they're not going to see that it's a table. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start conditional formatting. So in order to add conditional formatting to your visual, you're going to jump over here to the visualizations paint roller, and we are going to scroll all the way down to conditional formatting. For those of you who are new to Power BI, this is a scroll bar within a scroll bar. It's not necessarily the most user-friendly, but once you play around with it, you will certainly get used to it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set our background color. We're going to get a pop-up here that's going to ask us, what is it that we want to do? So we're going to set this field based on a field, and you're able to select different fields here from your different tables, but we're going to just leave it. We're going to select category color. Okay, so when I click OK, magic. Okay, we get a nice background color here. The next thing that I'm going to do is repeat myself, do the same thing. Repetition is the and I am going to now apply this to the font color. For those of you that work in Power BI, this is a really nice way to create like a scorecard visual. If you don't want to use a custom visual, you can do all sorts of things with tables and matrix visuals. You can add icons, you can add spark lines, you can add all sorts of different things. And that is just all little customizations playing around with it. Okay, finally, the next thing that we need to do here is we need to get our total column off of here. I'm going to remove that, and we're looking okay. The next thing I'm going to do is turn my visual header off. So there's lots of little tiny steps that we need to do to make this work, but we're in pretty good shape. Okay, so now let's just check and see if this thing works. It appears to be working, which is great. And if we had a time dimension on here, we could also sort and filter by time. I'm going to go ahead and just change the font color of the column headers. And voila, there's one more thing we need to do here. We need to get rid of that horizontal line. But that for today is our demo here about how to create your own custom legend. The very final piece of the puzzle that you're going to want to do, particularly if you have lots of visuals on your canvas, is you want to go to the View tab. I am not right. It's not on the View tab. You want to go to, sorry, the Formatting tab of the ribbon, where you're going to select Edit Interactions. When you select Edit Interactions, it's really hard to see, but you're going to see these little pop-ups here. So I've got my gray handles around my map, and I do not want my map to be able to filter my legend because I want the legend to always show up. So if I have that enabled, you see there, the legend is able to be filtered, and we do not want that. So I'm going to select None, and then our map here is not able to cross-filter with our legend. Okay, so apologies, thank you for sticking with me. That was a long presentation, but that is the workaround for creating your own custom legend that is interactive with both your data model and your map. And that's it.